In this last part of the flipped classroom, we're going to visit the different cities of these amazing empires, and then we're going to look at the empires in transition and their religious diversity, and last but not least, their decline. So here we've got a population chart. Between 1500 and 1800, the population of India increased from 105 million to 190 million. That's this largest line here. You can see they definitely had the most population. Now, while part of that is because of, like I said, new food crops, much of it too is because of the of conquest. The population of the Safavid Empire goes from 5 million to 8 million. They are the smallest here. And then the Ottoman Empire, again, as it is expanding, rises from 9 million to 28 million. Their capital cities were Istanbul for the Ottomans, Isfahan for the Safavids, and Agra and Delhi for the Mughals. Remember, they had much more control in regional areas. This is one of the great buildings that we're going to look at more closely in class, the Taj Mahal, built by Shah Jahan, considered to be one of the wonders of the world today. Even though these empires were known as Islamic empires, they did have incredibly diverse populations. While the rulers may have actively promoted Islam, conquered peoples were usually referred to as dhimmi, or protected people, and they were allowed to follow their own religious beliefs. However, that didn't mean that they weren't taxed. The jizya was still imposed, or the tax on non-Muslims. And although they had freedom to worship, there were times when things were less tolerant, like under the reign of Aurangzeb, for example. But people were supposed to have property and legal affairs rights. But again, things like the Devshirme compromised that. The Ottoman Empire, for example, had communities of Christians and Jews who were actually lived in different parts of the different cities and the countryside. And these were called millet communities. The Mughal Empire is the only empire that had a minority of Muslims ruling over a majority of a different religion, in this case Hinduism. And if you remember Akbar, which means the Great, actually created the syncretic blend of Sikhism, or divine faith, combining portions of Islam and Hinduism. And he actually even abolished the jizya. So an incredibly tolerant ruler. Now, all of that wonderment cannot last, even though these societies were incredibly prosperous in their days. They did fall behind. By the 18th century, they were in a serious state of decline, even though the Ottomans, like we saw in the first slide, hung on for quite a bit of time. As so often seems to be the case, the greatest rulers of each dynasty came in the early days of expansion. And when you weren't expanding because you had inept rulers, you had less taxes or less wealth from pillaging to pay your bills. But that didn't mean that people had any less extravagant lifestyles. Now, at first, you'll remember that the Ottomans were at the forefront of technology with their gunpowder, but over time, their reliance on that war technology led to their decline in technology because they were relying on this old technology. In addition to that, the less competent rulers, there was bloodshed caused by squabbles over succession, and there were also issues with political corruption, such as the Janissaries. And that will be looked at more in the next period. Muslims also began to rely on foreign merchants, like Europeans, to get goods instead of their own trade routes. And they also became as things slowed down, many of the same conservative religious leaders who put pressures on the rulers to restrict the rights of non-Muslims also led to a backlash of Western technology. So, for example, even though they had the printing press long ago, they outlawed the printing press to preserve their beautiful calligraphy traditions. So those types of things did not help. And ignoring the movements of the world didn't help these societies become stronger. As a part of that turn towards conservatism, they banned books, they did not allow any new European technology, and Europe became the heart of technology as they were expanding around the Atlantic and such. And they also, like I was mentioning, became religiously intolerant. And those are the things that showed the decline of these different empires. Thanks for watching. Please fill out the listening check before you are done.